What does short hair and men's underwear have to do with economics? What does that have to do with the class that you're taking? That's the question we're asking today. Well, what is the current hair trend, ladies in the class? What are you seeing? Is it short hair is the trend, or is it long hair? Well, it turns out that the length of women's hair tells you how well the economy is doing. So what is the current trend? Is it going shorter or going longer? Well, what we have found is that when the trend is a shorter haircut, it tells you that consumers, people buying goods and services, are quite concerned about the economy. Think about it. If you're concerned that you may not have a job, you're putting in extra hours at work. Do you have time for the long hair that takes all that extra time to prepare in the morning? Maybe you're spending your days looking for a job. Maybe you're cutting back on expenses in case you might lose your job, or maybe you've already lost it and so you have to scrape to get by. Well, the extra money that's spent on hair products, on curling irons and flat irons, all of that costs money. So we tend to see is that as consumers are more optimistic, if you think the economy is going to get better, women's hair starts to get longer. When we think that the economy is getting worse, women's hair starts to get shorter. So the question is, what do you think is happening currently in the economy? Do we expect things to get better? Do we expect things to get worse? Well, we can actually measure consumer confidence. So what we have here, see that graph there, is you can see the level of consumer confidence. And you see that big dip there in 2016? Well, that's when oil prices fell here in Alberta. And there were lots of layoffs. The unemployment rate went up in Alberta, and consumers were not very confident. They thought things were going to get worse. What you see as you look at that graph now, you look at that far end, that line is up. So it suggests that consumers are more confident. They think the economy is going to improve, that there's going to be more job opportunities coming up. Does that match with what you're seeing in terms of hair trends? Well, what about men's underwear? What does men's underwear have to do with the economy? Well, Alan Greenspan, he was the head of the Federal Reserve in the U.S. The Federal Reserve is their central bank. They determine the money supply in the U.S. Well, Alan Greenspan has a theory. He says you can tell when the economy is terrible based on sales of men's underwear. The idea is that men, think about men in the class, when do you buy underwear? You buy underwear when the old one is full of holes, when it has to be replaced. That's the only time you buy underwear. You don't just go out shopping, browsing, and think, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go and buy extra underwear. You buy it to replace the previous. So you know the economy is really bad if men stop buying underwear. And if we look at 2009, the Great Recession, it was called in the U.S. We'll talk more about whether it was a Great Recession in Canada later this semester, but we were in a recession. The economy was shrinking, the unemployment rate was going up. And what was happening to the sale of men's underwear? Well, it dropped in 2009. It dropped 2.3%. Okay. Well, what about the sale of men's underwear now? Well, the sale of men's underwear has gone back up and is about back to the levels it was at before that 2009-2010 recession, indicating that things have gotten better. You can find more interesting economic indicators on Blackboard, so check them out and see what women's lipstick, movie theater tickets, and other items, what they tell you about the economy.